Good morning. It's time for Children's Church. So gather the kids around, and we're about to have a story time, and we're going to have a pretty exciting object lesson coming up. So get ready. And if you don't mind, my cat's going to join us. Now let's go back in time, and this is in the Old Testament in 1 Samuel. And the story's going to come from 1 Samuel 17, and it's about a boy named David. Now, we've talked about David before, and I think we've even heard the lesson about David and Goliath. But let me give you a little bit of background on David. Now, David, about the time between he was 8 and 15 years old, he was one out of 8 sons of a man named Jesse. Now, at this time, there's a king, and the king's name is Saul, and he's the very first king of Israel that God had chosen. Now, the problem was that Saul wasn't following God anymore. He'd kind of started relying on himself. And at that time also, there was a prophet named Samuel. Now, prophets' jobs were to listen to God, and God spoke directly to the prophets, and the prophets were to tell people what God wanted them to know. Well, God had told Samuel, I need you to tell Saul something. And this is what he said. But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Well, there needed to be a new king. God had somebody in mind. So he sent Samuel. He said, I want you to go to Bethlehem, and I want you to find a man named Jesse, and he's got some sons. And in those sons, I've got the one picked that I want to anoint king. And so Samuel did what God had told him to do, and he went to Bethlehem. And Jesse was excited. He said, okay, one of my sons is going to be king. So he put his oldest and his strongest son in front of Jesse first. And Jesse said, in front of Samuel first. Samuel said, nope, that's not the one. So Jesse sent the next son. Samuel said, nope, that's not the one. And he continued to send 7 of his sons in front of Samuel. And Samuel said, nope, that's not the one. Don't you have any other sons? Jesse said, yeah, I've got one. He's my youngest. He's out in the field with the sheep. We'll go get him. And so when he brings in the youngest son, his name is David, and he said, now David was ruddy and bright-eyed, but good-looking. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is the one. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. Okay, so that's the background information. So he's the youngest of 8 brothers, or 8 sons, and he was secretly anointed king. Now, he's not king yet because King Saul is still king, but he's going to be king. Now, fast forward, David now is about 22 years old. Now, he's still tending the sheep. He's still doing what his father's job of tending the sheep, and he's out in the fields, and he's got 3 older brothers that are in the army and fighting for the Israelites. And there's a battle about to happen or going on. And the Israelites are fighting a group of people called the Philistines. And the Philistines, man, they're these giants. They are so big, and they're warriors. And the Israelites were about to go up against them, and they were kind of worried. And all of a sudden, this guy comes out from the Philistines, and his name is Goliath, and he's over 9 feet tall. And he says, choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And so, they're looking around in the Israelite army and saying, who's going to go up against this guy? Well, remember, Jesse is the father. Jesse had sent David to go give some food to his brothers that are in the army. And so David had arose early that morning, had left his sheep with a keeper, and took the things that his father Jesse had commanded him to take to his brothers, and he went to find down to where they were fighting. And he gave the stuff to a supply barrier keeper, and he ran to the army, and he came and greeted his brothers. And he said, what's going on? And his brothers told him what was going on, and one of his brothers even kind of got a little mad. He said his oldest brother, when he spoke to the men, and Eliab was the brother's name, was aroused anger against David because David was, what are you here for? What are you trying to do? And when David found out what the Philistine Goliath had challenged the Israelite army to, he said, I can do it. He doesn't need to challenge God's army. This is God's army. Now, when God had chosen David. And later on, it says in the Bible that David was a man after God's own heart. He had a heart for God. David did. And David said, no, you're not going to go up against my God's army. We're going to fight you. And we're not going to fight you with swords and with things like that. We're going to fight you with God, because this is God's battle, not ours. And so he tells Saul, he goes up to Saul and he says, I can do this. And Saul says, no, this guy has been a warrior all his life. This Goliath, he's over 9 feet tall. He's got on all this armor. He's protected, and he's been fighting ever since he was little. What can you do? Well, David said, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Well, Saul tried to put some armor on David. David's too small. It wouldn't fit, so he just takes it off. He takes a slingshot that he's always used to protect his sheep, and he goes to the river in the spring, and he finds 5 rocks, 5 smooth stones, and he puts them in his pocket, in his pouch. And he goes up to the Philistine, and he says to him, then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. He takes one stone out of his pouch, he puts it in the sling. He swings the sling as hard as he can, and he flings it, and it hits Goliath right in the center of the forehead, and he falls down. And David doesn't have a sword or anything, so he takes Goliath's own sword from his body, and he takes his head, and he has victory, and he gives the victory to God. Now, in just a second, we're going to talk about, we can be small, but we're going to have these challenges in life that are going to feel like we're going up against giants. But you know what? What we have is God. And we can pray for strength through prayer, and we can ask God to be with us. And I'm sure right before, I guarantee you, David proclaimed God is going to be victorious in that battle, but I guarantee you he prayed to God before that battle, and he said, God, give me strength. And you're going to get the glory for this, but give me strength and do what your will is. So every time you come up against some giants, remember David's story, and remember that you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. For if God is with you, who can be against you? Now stay tuned for an object lesson coming up quick.
Alright, it's time for the object lesson, and we're going to be outside, and I've got 2 volunteers that are going to help me, and we're going to do a challenge to see if David can still beat Goliath. Alright, are you ready? Okay, I have with me here 2 of my family members, my lovely daughter who's going to be Goliath. Goliath, are you here? And I have my cute little grandson, and he's going to be David. David, are you ready? Show me your muscles. Show me your muscles. All right. Now, what the challenge is going to be is we've got Goliath who doesn't have God with him, and we've got little David who has a heart for God. And we're going to see who can make their Coke go the highest in the air. All right? So we've got Goliath here. And Goliath, when I tell you ready, and you're gonna see how far you can shoot. You can either leave it on the table, or if you can try to. No, you're not aiming it this way. And you're going to shoot it as high as you can in the air. All right, are you ready? Set. Let's see. Go. Well, that went pretty high. Went pretty high. She did pretty good. Now we've got little bitty David over here. Now little David, when he was fighting Goliath, he took 5 stones from the river and he prayed to God. All right, so let's get your 5 stones, Josh, or David. All right, Cody, can you hold that for me? Come here, you man. All right, let's pick those 5 stones. Put your finger under there. Put your finger under there like this. Put your finger under there like this, because we don't want them to drop in first, okay? So we're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now you are gonna pray. Can you pray real quick? All right, dear God, we just pray for David and just help him, Lord, to give him strength, and help him, Lord, to do your will, Father God, and just give him the strength to win in this battle. We love you and we praise you. Amen. All right, you ready? Okay, you gotta move your finger when I say go, okay? Go! All right, David, did you win the battle? Yes, you did. David won the battle, and it's all because he believed in God and he relied on the strength of God rather than his own strength. And we give all the praise to God. And all God's children said, amen.